Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of short playthroughs of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Lunar Lander. This was a 1979 release from Atari, and it was designed as kind of a showcase title for a vector graphics engine that Atari had developed following the success of one of the earliest visual computer games, Space War. Lunar Lander games had actually been a thing for quite a while before Lunar Lander itself was released. A lot of those had been text-based, and they've been around since about 1969, running on mainframe computers with sort of punch cards and printouts and that sort of thing. And the designer of Lunar Lander for Atari, Howard Delman, thought that this style of game would be a good fit for the vector engine, and you know what? It is. This was Atari's first vector graphics game, the first of several, some of which we've seen already on this collection, and some of which we'll see in the coming weeks. And it was also the first game to feature multiple perspectives. So you'll see as we play that you have the overview perspective of the whole lunar surface when you're sort of getting in position, and then it will actually zoom in and show you a closer view of what's going on. That was something that could be done thanks to the flexibility of the vector graphics, something that was very difficult to do with bitmap graphics, and so we wouldn't see things like scaling and that sort of thing until much later arcade games that used bitmap graphics. Another bit of trivia, this was one of the first games to be copyrighted, although due to the fact that there had been previous Lunar Lander games, like those aforementioned mainframe games that I talked about, the actual gameplay itself couldn't be patented, but this was supposedly one of the first two games to be actually copyrighted and registered in that way. So, let's go play Lunar Lander. Okay, here we are with Lunar Lander. I am rubbish at this game, but I will attempt to demonstrate how it works. As long as I can remember how it works. So, here we go. So, in the Switch version I'm playing here, you control your craft's rotation with the left stick, and you control your thrust with the right stick. And controlling your thrust is an analog affair. So, on the original machine, there was actually an analog lever that you'd use on this, so you could precisely control how much thrust you were applying at any point. And this game is surprisingly sim-like in a lot of ways. So it takes into account things like friction and gravity. Up at the top, you've got a very helpful readout of things like your horizontal and your vertical velocity and your altitude. And so using that information, you need to set yourself down as gently as possible. Because if you land too heavily, you won't get the full points. Or if you land much too heavily, then you'll just destroy yourself. But you also want to try and conserve your fuel as much as possible. So I got 200 points for that. But you'll notice that you don't get any fuel back. And so you just have to try and land as many times as you can, using the limited amount of fuel you start with. So we're down to 400 already. We start with 750. There are actually settings in Atari Flashback Classics that allows you to start with more fuel if you want to. So if you want a longer game, you can do. And obviously that would have been the equivalent of the dip switch settings on the original arcade machine. So if you do want to tweak the way the game works, then you can do. Let's see if we can land on this teeny tiny platform here. Now this might not be looking too horrendously difficult at the moment, but trust me, as I'll demonstrate in a moment, this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to difficulty in Lunar Lander. This is what it calls the training mission. Yeah, 250 points. Very nice. There are several difficulty levels above this, which are much, much more demanding. So when I've run out of fuel here, which is probably going to happen on this attempt, I reckon, we will take a look at those and how they differ from what is going on here. So the rotation controls in this were actually digital, if I remember correctly. I think it was buttons for rotating left and right rather than an analog joystick. So you can also use the There we are, low on fuel. You can actually also use the D-pad on these console versions as well. Which is actually a very good idea on those harder difficulty levels, as we'll see in a moment. Come on, set it down. No! Death. You still get points for dying horribly, though. Alright, so 470 points on the training mission. Not bad. Not brilliant. But there we go. So if we press the X button, there's the X button, isn't it? I always get confused with the layout of the Nintendo buttons versus Xbox buttons. So training mission has light gravity, friction from the atmosphere, and what it calls controlled rotation. So that means you tap in one direction and you rotate a certain amount in that direction. It's just a flat rate. Cadet mission, yeah, we have moderate gravity, no friction from the atmosphere, and again, controlled rotation. The Prime mission, we have strong gravity, no friction, and controlled rotation. And then the Command mission, we have moderate gravity, so it bumps the difficulty, the gravity down a bit, but it has this thing called rotational momentum, which is an absolute nightmare to deal with, but it's the only way to play if you want to be considered a Lunar Lander pro, I believe, anyway. So let's take a look at this. This is the aspect of the game that I'm really bad at. So let's take a look. So you start as before, but the difference is if you tap... Oh, have I started on the wrong... Oh no, there we go. This doesn't... That was good, wasn't it? Let's just reset that, because I'm not sure I set the correct thing. It's a command mission, moderate gravity, no friction, rotational momentum. Okay, here we go. Ah, here we go. That's working better now. So what happens in this one is, rather than just tapping a direction to rotate a particular amount, what happens is you tap the button to rotate in a direction, and you start rotating in that direction. And the more times you press that button, the faster you rotate in that direction. So I've tapped it once there, and I rotate a constant rate like that. I have to tap right to compensate for that, and start and actually stop rotating to the left. And if I hold right for too long, or if I tap right too many times, then I will then start rotating towards the right. I suppose I should be saying clockwise and anti-clockwise, really, shouldn't I? But you know what I mean. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And so obviously that makes actually making yourself point the correct direction a bit more of a challenge, because you can't just make minor adjustments to your course. You can, but in doing so you have to remember to compensate for them. So kind of like what you do in flying a plane, I guess. So if you're flying a real plane, it's not just a case of wrenching the stick to the left until you're facing the direction you want to be going. What you do is you tilt the plane to one side and you use the rudder so it's turning, and then you have to actually sort of push it back in the other direction to stop it turning again. So it's a very different way to play. Makes it much more challenging, but also a lot more rewarding as well. So, however, given the amount of fuel it generally takes to compensate for rotation and positioning in this mode, I don't know how it's possible to do more than one landing. Yes, there we go. Out of fuel. Just falling gracefully to the floor. So that's Lunar Lander. In between, like I say, we have the Cadet and the Prime missions, which have strong gravity and no friction, or moderate gravity and no friction. Let's just have a go at the Prime mission. See how that differs. So strong gravity should mean that it'll be harder to slow our descent. And yes, it is much more difficult to slow our descent with this, using a lot more fuel just to... Yeah, I can't... That's full thrust and I can't stop. You see? So you actually need to stay higher up and slow your descent before you get anywhere near the ground. Because otherwise you're just going to hit the floor. That's going to end badly. It's going to end really badly. Come on. Thrust. Yeah, see, that just seems like it's actually impossible. I almost don't feel like that's actually possible. Well, maybe it is. Maybe you've just got to... Yeah, you've got to try and get yourself in position and slow your descent at the same time, which is the difficult thing. So you need to really keep an eye on those speed readouts. And obviously not waste tons of fuel. But yeah, if you look at the vertical speed meter, compare how quickly it accelerates with how quickly it decelerates by using the thrust. And yeah, you'll see where the problems lie. Yeah, I was always kind of a bit intimidated by this game when I was a kid, but I've kind of got to grips with it a bit more now, so I have a better feel for how it works and how you control it. So yes, it is a turn and thrust game, and I've talked about how I generally have a bit of difficulty with those, but the way this is implemented, and because you're not expected to do anything else other than keep your craft under control, yeah, I find it's a bit more accessible than sort of turn and thrust games where you also have to worry about avoiding obstacles and shooting things as well. So yeah, this is a really simple game, but this is a timeless classic for good reason. And yeah, certainly a good addition to this package. So let's leave that there for now. I think that's a good place to stop. So I'll just say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.